Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me in this class on a very important subject and a subject that's being discussed a lot now on the internet, social media. We'll say specifically, we could say we're going to talk about a current fad that's very popular nowadays and help to dispel some of the myths and misunderstandings about this fad. What is this fad? Fasting. Not to say it doesn't have value, but we're going to talk about today on our subject how and when to properly fast according to Ayurveda. And of course, Ayurveda is an ancient healthcare system that has been writing about fasting for over 800 years. And of course, in the practice of Ayurveda, the tool of fasting has been used for thousands of years, just like it has in other healthcare systems. However, modern times have ignored this ancient wisdom and chose to just follow social media influencers. And unfortunately, there's many myths, misunderstandings, and mistakes that people are making. Thus, I'm doing this video because many of my patients have been coming to me who are doing the so-called intermediate fasting incorrectly, or it's maybe even harmful for their health. My name is Kabir Southwick, Ayurvedic doctor and Ayurvedic pharmacist in practice over 27 years and doing Zoom appointments worldwide and mailing my herbal products to my patients worldwide. I'm also the founder of herbmanteas.com, the sponsor of today's class. So, intermediate fasting. Let's talk today about a few aspects. First, we're going to talk about why this popular new method, it can do more harm than good for some people. And we're going to talk about, of course, the Ayurvedic perspective of who fasting is good for and who fasting is not suitable for. Of course, that's going to be broken down into the three body types or prakriti, vata, pitta, and kapha. Fasting is not for everybody. In fact, every food, every herb, every treatment can be poison for one person and beneficial for another. So you can always spot the amateurs than the online because they tell everybody to do the same thing. That is the textbook sign of an unprofessional person. It means they have a little knowledge, something worked for them, and now they go out and tell everybody to do the same thing. Well, these people are not in practice, because if I was in practice and I told everybody to do the same thing, I would be out of practice, because everything is not suitable for everyone, because we are very unique. And Ayurveda acknowledges this by the breakdown of our different constitutional types, which there are quite a few: Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Vata, Pitta, Vata, Kapha, Kapha, Pitta, Kapha, Vata, Vata, Pitta, Vata, Kapha, and Tridoshic. And so there's different types of people, just like there's many different types of cars. You can't fix every car engine isn't the same, and every human is not the same. And we're at different stages of our lives. Some are young, some are old, some are overweight, some are thin, some are cold, some are warm. So, and then there's then we have health issues as well on top of our constitution. And I'm going to explain today what health issues can benefit from fasting, what body types or prakritis can benefit, and those that cannot benefit, and even those health issues where fasting would be counterindicated. It's very easy to learn about herbs and treatments, and this is what most people focus on. They try to study the benefits of an herb, but in fact, it's easy to learn the benefits. Even my employees who, pack and bag tea and listen to me, they learn about the benefits of a lot of herbs and our products, but they don't know the counterindications. And that's why they cannot function professionally. So just because you have a good treatment, a good herb, a good product, a good diet, you have to memorize the counterindications, when you should not do it. And this, of course, is always avoided by the amateur, the social media influencer, the person who's just representing information. And of course, now that's exactly how we've gotten down this rabbit hole of everybody believing in intermediate fasting. is the new cure-all. Kind of after mushrooms, that was the previous cure-all. Still popular, still rolling. And then turmeric was a cure-all for a while. Manuka honey was a cure-all for a while. When you've been in practice for decades, we see the fads come and go. No matter how much people are convinced that it's the best diet, the best treatment. And in hindsight, I can see how people were so passionate about these. The a blood type diet that was so passionate, everybody, but now you don't even hear from it at all. So, it's not that fasting is unhealthy. It's that you have to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and most people don't. And then, of course, we'll talk about the time to fast. This is the biggest mistake that we see online about fasting is when to start and when to stop, which is critical. And of course, this is not my opinion. I'm basing this on Ayurveda because I guess I'm humble enough to realize that I am not any wiser than the thousands of sages and previous Ayurvedic doctors in history over thousands of years. So instead of having my opinion, which is really not a good idea, in Ayurveda or really any condition until you get to be the master. When you're the master, you can have your own opinions, you can make your own formulas, you can have your own system because you're at that caliber, that level where you're able to be a little creative and maybe go outside of the box and create something new. And then we'll talk about supplemental things that we can do, as we're fasting. There's many teas and herbs that can be taken during fasting to help you fast, depending, of course, on the individual. And there's even juices and things that can be taken, etc. So let's talk about, first of all, the counterindications of fasting. Who should not fast? Well, of course, in Ayurveda, we have three major body types, our constitutions, our prakriti, and it's vata, pitta, and kapha. So it like most foods, herbs, um, one dosha can benefit from it the most. One dosha or can it will not benefit them. And then there's usually one dosha in the middle that depends on that individual. Let me give you another example. Coffee. Of course, many people out there say, oh, coffee's bad, coffee's bad. Other people say coffee's good, and this is just kind of like, what can we say? Like, I don't want to say immature view of life when you break things down and good or bad. It's another sign of an unprofessional, unknowledgeable person when they start saying things are good and things are bad. So if you ask me, is coffee good or is coffee bad? I would just give you the simple answer. It depends. If you ask me if fasting is good or fasting is bad, I would say it depends. And that's the main point. You cannot believe anything is good because or bad because it all depends. So back to the example of coffee, which is very easy to understand. If you're a kapha, if you're a vata person, you're thin, you're light, you're dry, you're nervous, you're anxious, you got a fast heart rate, it's going 75, even 80. You can hear it beating. You're thinking too much. Your brain's going too much. You're lying in bed. You don't, have insomnia. Well, for you, and you're dry. You have dry lips. So for you, coffee would be poison because let's face it, coffee is a diuretic. It's going to make you more dry. It's also inflammatory. So if you have joint pain, it's going to make your pain worse. Of course, it's going to increase your pulse. You already have a fast pulse. It can increase your blood pressure. It can overstimulate your mind. You can overthink, contribute to anxiety, and even an insomnia. Almost every insomniac that I ever do appointment for is drinking, just one cup of coffee. Some are drinking multiple cups of coffee and still don't accept the fact that that's the cause of their insomnia. So you can clearly see that if you're that type of person, and hopefully you know that type of person. If you're not, we all know this type of person: thin, light, dry, cold, nervous, anxious, a very active person. Vata means air. And then there's another type, of course, that's the kapha: heavy, dense, round, big eyes, round face, big body. Really easy to gain weight, roundish shape, roundish hips, roundish breast. Now, of course, if they work out and try to lose weight, they can have big muscle, but they're still going to be big, like a bear. Even when they're healthy, they're going to have this big shape like a bear, just a big person. Not necessarily tall. They could be short and big, and tall and big, but they're kapha, and they tend to be a little slow, a little sluggish, a little heavy, gain weight, have a low pulse. Some of them can have pulses even lower than 60. Um, and they're kind of like a truck, a little trouble getting going in the morning, a little slow. And then later in the day, they get rolling and they can go all day even without food. This is your textbook kapha type of body type constitution. Um, and they benefit from coffee. And in fact, I get patients, they're overweight. They come to me, they're trying to lose weight. And they say, well, oh, doctor, can I have my coffee for breakfast? And I said, sure, have your coffee for breakfast. Just don't put the creamer in it. You can put a little honey in it. And they go, oh, that's fine. Thank you. You're the only one that told me I could have coffee. What else should I have for breakfast? They tend to ask. And I said, that's it, sweetie. You're overweight, 270 pounds. You're trying to lose weight. Just drink the coffee and get going and wait until you actually have an appetite because, of course, probably aren't hungry anyway. And they're not hungry. But sometimes people, they follow these things online where they've read they should always have breakfast, but not if you're this type of person. Just have the coffee, get your heart beating, get your pulse going, get your metabolism going, get your brain going, get your bowels moving. And maybe if you have swelling, it even gets some water out of you. It's just perfect for a kapha person for breakfast. Their whole breakfast is just coffee. I've known some overweight people that just had coffee for breakfast, a coffee and an apple for lunch, and then a light dinner, and that was their whole meal, the whole day, losing weight. So they just use the coffee to keep going, so they're not hungry, and they don't have the extra body weight to burn off, so they don't get tired, fatigued. They don't have insomnia. So poison for one person, medicine for another. And of course, the pitta person's in the middle, so it would depend on if they leaned a little bit more vata. If they were pitta vata, then maybe, and they had insomnia, then it would be counterindicated. And if they're a pitta type person, but they were overweight and maybe no insomnia, then maybe they could do some coffee. So maybe they could do a little bit. So there's always one category in the middle that you have to think through. And now we'll go do the same little analogy on the vata type person, pitta type person, and kapha type person when it comes to fasting. So let's go back to the kapha. Who's the kapha? Big, overweight, heavy, 40, 50 pounds of extra weight, slow, sluggish, not much appetite in the morning, gets hungry later in the day. Fasting. We're going to talk a little bit more about different types of fasting. So I'm still speaking in general terms because there's hundreds of ways to fast. First of all, there's a whole science behind it. Chinese medicine, Hippocrates, Ayurveda. There's just many different types of fasting that all of these systems speak about, and they all speak about the same knowledge because in ancient times they believed in ancient wisdom. And, we don't believe in ancient wisdom anymore. We just ignore it. But they didn't. And so they're all in harmony with each other, saying the same thing. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But back to the analogy of the overweight person. They are the person that should be doing the fasting. And in fact, almost all kapha people, I already am doing intermediate fasting with them because it's in the books for this type of kapha person should be doing intermediate fasting. So I get kapha overweight people who come to me and maybe they've already done multiple appointments with me and they've already lost weight. And they go, well, I think I should do intermediate fasting. I saw some guy and they said it's a cure for everything. I go, you've been doing intermediate fasting. They go, what do you mean? Well, I told you, skip breakfast, have lunch, no snacks, and then have a light dinner. So you've been doing intermediate fasting from the day I met you. That's one reason you've been losing weight. Once you're not snacking at all, you're doing intermediate fasting. So you're, break fast, you're breaking the fast. So you You ate early in the evening, you didn't eat in the morning, then you didn't have it, and you went to all the way to lunch. So you were doing a big fast every single day. And then you had a lunch, maybe 12 or 1, then you didn't eat again till 7 or 8. So you had a second little fast. So you've been fasting twice a day the whole time. It's just they get confused when they watch this stuff online and they don't realize that they have been doing intermediate fasting. Now, of course, this type of kapha person, they can do full day fast, and we're going to talk about that fast. And there's other supplemental things we can do as well with our fast to make it easier. But let's go back to understanding who should not fast. That is that vata person, the same one that shouldn't have the coffee. Why? Because they're thin, light, and often depleted. What are the counterindications to fasting? Hair loss, number one. If you're losing hair, don't be fasting unless you're 100% sure it's hormonal, like in my case. That's due to my high testosterone level, just burned off the top of my head. Because if you lose the hair right in the center, that's the testosterone. So that's not from being depleted. But if you're for a woman and you're losing hair and it's thinning out, then fasting's counterindicated. And if you have a degenerative bone condition, osteopenia, osteoarthritis, any low bone density, then fasting is counterindicated. Even if you have a lot of nutritional deficiencies, and or if you feel very extremely weak, you're thin type person, you're weak, you don't have much appetite, and you're losing weight already. So in other words, you're depleted, or you have weight loss, degenerative bones. These are all deficiencies. They're all depletion. And this comes from, and that's why they're counterindicated. And that can come from poor appetite, poor digestion. But a lot of thin vata people are just having salads and smoothies and coffee, and they're just not eating enough. So then they get these degenerative conditions where they feel weak, their hair starts losing hair, their fingernails become soft and brittle, they have low bone density, their joints are cracking because their cartilage is depleted. Also, sciatica is a counterindicated because sciatica, of course, is the nerves being pinched in the spine, so you have low cartilage, and you need to build that cartilage back up. And if you fast, the whole thing's going to get worse. So, and we've had many patients like that. That's why I'm doing this class, is because I'm getting every single day people who are fasting when they should not be fasting. I usually say, ma'am, you have hair loss. The doctor says you have osteoarthritis, which is a degenerative bone condition. You feel weak, you feel tired, you have no energy, you got your collarbone sticking out, you're bony, you're and why would you be fasting? You need to build, you need to strengthen, you need to put on weight. You're underweight, you're depleted, and you're doing absolutely the wrong thing by even intermediate fasting. Okay, again, pitta would be in the middle. If they were thin, pitta vata, then fasting would be counterindicated, or you could do a little bit, short periods. We're going to talk about that. And then if they were overweight, of course, it's really the weight is the key issue here, because if you have 20, 30 pounds of extra weight, you can fast probably 5 days and it'd be fine. I mean, just think of the polar bear. I mean, the polar bear plumpens up and then he goes in a cave for 3 months and doesn't eat. But of course, he isn't going to work. He's not walking. He's just sleeping it off for a few months in a cave. So he's really lowered his metabolism to burn the fat very slowly to get through the winter. But it does show you can survive for quite a long time if you have a body fat. If you're bony and you get the bones sticking out of the back of your hand and you can see holes here in the collarbone, you can see your ribs, then you have insufficient fat on the diet, no matter how much you think you look good in a bikini or how much you love your six pack, because would be technically low in fat. And you can have a lot of muscle, like you can see a bodybuilder and he's got a lot of muscle and extremely low fat levels. So, if he fasts and he's going to actually end up having to lose muscle mass because he doesn't have the fat to burn. So if you want to fast, you got to have a little extra fat. That's the main thing that you need to have. Now, other benefits of fasting is that, it can reset your digestive system. It's most suitable for somebody who has no appetite in the first place. You're not hungry, you're not eating until 3 or 4 o'clock, and by fasting a complete day, not intermediate fasting, fasting a complete day, an overweight person, just one day can reset their digestive system to get the appetite going in the morning. So if you're a person and you're just maybe 10, 20, 30 pounds overweight and you have no appetite at all, you're not hungry, you could skip breakfast. It doesn't matter whether you're eating breakfast or not. Every time I ask people, are you hungry for breakfast? They always say, well, I eat breakfast. No, that wasn't the question. The question was, are you hungry? And they sometimes say, not really. No, my wife just cooks breakfast and I eat it with the kids. Well, that's a fast track to gaining weight, eating when you're not hungry. So this type of person, so I say, when would you get hungry? If your wife wasn't cooking for you, you were all by yourself, when would you get hungry? Like you would just have to go in the kitchen and go get something. And some people say, well, probably I could go all day till 4 or 5 o'clock. I'll wait till the wife comes home, not eat anything. That type of person could benefit from fasting because by fasting one day, not intermediate fasting, fasting a whole day and then starting to break the fast the next morning, because by morning they will be hungry and that will shift their appetite back to the morning. And this is a sign of poor health. No appetite. In fact, a lot of people who gain weight and they don't know why they're gaining weight, they keep gaining weight even though they're, running in the gym like a rat on a treadmill, and they're starving themselves or doing some fad diet like keto. There's my stab for keto, which I like to get in every every talk. You know who I'm talking about. And and they're still not losing weight. Why? Because they have no digestion. They have no appetite. If you have no appetite, that's a sign of low metabolism. So when you let them fast the whole day, then they're hungry in the morning, then when that hunger is good sign and gets their appetite going again. So those are the two, those are the counter indications of fasting. Who should not fast? Anybody with any degenerative condition, who's weak and depleted and underweight, or just if you're Vata in general. Another analogy, every year I do spring detox. So I get all these people, I don't have a packaged canned spring detox. We just ended, it was last month. We did a lot of people. And and I do a fixed price, but I don't publish what it is like most people. You see so many people will like, do this for spring. Nope, amateur land. So when they come to me, whether a new patient or an old patient, then, if they're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, that determines their fast. So, okay, say we got a thin little Vata, but not much appetite, been gaining weight over the winter. She got maybe an extra 5 pounds. I'll let her do a detox. She's still going to eat, but I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to reduce it down to lighter foods. And no snacking, and lighter foods, not so heavy foods, not so much weight gaining foods, animal protein in particular. And I'll just do 1 week because she's only got about 5-10 extra pounds anyway. She's really bony and thin and depleted and 105 pounds, and I won't even accept them to do this cleanse. They need to have a little extra weight, but it's natural to gain weight during the winter, and it's natural to lose the weight in the spring. So we're assuming the person gained a little weight in the winter and now they want to shed it in the spring. So I'll do 1 week. Pittas, I'll usually do 2 weeks. And Kaphas, I'll do 3 or 4 weeks, but not of a pure fast because most people are working. Most people have jobs. And of course, you need a little food to have a sex life too. You get a little week without food. And I'm an expert at fasting. I've fasted the most 21 days with no food. And I can remember it very deeply. I used to do a lot of 1 week. And I have to admit that I did over fast. This is in my 20s in India. But again, I wasn't doing anything. I was going to ashrams and chanting and going to Ayurvedic classes. I wasn't really stressing out. I was on the Ganges River. So, and I just had like maybe a couple Ayurvedic classes in the morning, and then I was free. So I was fasting, and what I did was I went out to the Ganges River, and I would lie in the sun on a big rock. I remember the rock. I've even been back, of course, many times to Rishikesh, and I know the rock I was on. And I would lie in the sun, and I would drink the water from the Ganges River. And the longest I did was 21 days. And I remember one day when I came out of my little hut I was staying in India in Rishikesh in in my early 20s, and this is somewhere in the 80s, and it was a cloudy day, and my eyes started tearing because the sun meant so much to me because I wasn't having food. So the sun felt good. That's why I lied on the rock. The rock was warm and the sun was warm. So I literally just lied on the rock. And sometimes I'd even get in the Ganges River if I got too hot and then go back on the rock. I mean, and I was drinking the water from the Ganges River. But I overdid it. And the first signs I had, of course, were, and it affected me. It took me a few years to recover from all the fasting. And if I see pictures of myself back then, I was definitely thin and bony after 21 days of not eating. And yeah, my hair started falling out worse. And the worst was I lost 3 or 4 teeth, because I still just wasn't, I was doing too much fasting that whole period of my life. I was into meditation and yoga and fasting. Those were the big things. And I lost quite a few teeth. They just cracked and fell out. So that's a degenerative condition when your teeth start cracking. And I remember I used to play the guitar. I played classical guitar, and my nails were so soft that I had to get nail hardeners from a woman and harden my nails because I could not play my guitar because my fingernails were so soft that the strings would just wear out my fingernails. And now, I'm now a big milk drinker now, and I'm definitely not doing much fasting now. And I do a little bit in the spring, but now my nails are hard as a rock. And I have to file them down, and really great for picking the guitar. Those nice firm nails. So of course I was young and a little extreme at the time. And most people are extreme even in their older age. And I saw a video on YouTube that said all the mistakes I made fasting. Now, I didn't watch it, but I chuckled because that's what you call learning the hard way. And that's why we have a system. That's why we're trained in Ayurveda. I'm a trained person, trained in Ayurveda, and, registered as an Ayurvedic doctor due to my decades of training, which I was studying in India and fasting at the time. So, we have a system. We're not winging it. We don't ever look online. We're following what we're supposed to be doing. So now back to let's talk about the two types of fasting. You've got intermediate fasting, which is basically not eating between the meals. Just forget whatever you see online. And then you have full day fasting. So the Vata type of person should really never do full day fasting. They will pass out, faint, dizzy, lightheaded, all kinds of issues because they just don't have the body weight to go 24 hours. But in the spring, they could do a little like intermediate fasting, just no snacking between the meals at all. And Kapha people should be doing intermediate fasting their whole life. No snacking between the meals, except maybe an apple or a pear, and not sweet fruit. It's not going to really break a fast because there's no protein, there's no fat. It's very, it's just fiber and a little bit of those carbohydrates that nobody likes. And it won't really hurt your fast. It will just kind of snuff out the appetite. So I tell people, you can still have a fruit, but of course, different fruit for different people. For Vata type, we generally give heavier fruits like bananas, and Kapha Pitta type, we give sweeter fruits like blueberries and grapes, and then Kaphas, we can give apples. So, if you're going to fast for a few days, I think it's a little bit better, even according to Ayurveda, to have just a little fruit in there because it gets you the blood sugar, kind of keeps you going and fills you up. In fact, I've used there's many different treatments that can benefit from fasting. One time I was meeting patients in Morocco. I used to go to Morocco 2 times a year for 4 or 5 years. So I had a lot of patients there. I like to say I'm the one who brought Ayurveda to Morocco because I traveled all over the country, Rabat, Casablanca, Marrakesh, Agadir, and used to speak. And I did this little routine. And so before I go, people would be booking already in advance. So I had one man, he had a very poor, bad skin condition, kind of like psoriasis condition. He sent me pictures. And I knew that Morocco had a lot of grapes in the spring. So I said, do a grape fast before I get there. I'll see you in a week or so, or a couple weeks, and just eat these little wild grapes. Just only eat those for a week. And then I just forgot about it. It was all in email. I got there. I saw the guy. His whole skin condition was gone. And I mean, he did the appointment for the skin condition, but by the time I got there, it had already cleared. And then he reminded me that I told him to do the grape fast. He says, man, that really cleaned me out. But, if you look at the text, skin conditions, particularly inflammatory skin conditions, dermatitis, inflammation of the skin, there's red, there's rash, there's hives, there's burning in particular, heat, then you can do a sweet fruit fast. Not a sour fruit fast, or it can make it worse, but a sweet fruit fast. And that is, and the best of all the fruits, the king of the best fruit for fasting, for at least for pitta type, not kapha, is the grape, and particularly the wild grape. Very powerful, very cleansing. So it was amazing. He showed me the pictures of his skin. It was just terrible. And 1 week, I can't remember how many days, but he just only had grapes. So you can lose weight if we talk about other and you can treat conditions. I'll treat conditions doing fasting plus a tea, fasting plus a fruit. For a kapha type, mostly I give them lemon, honey, ginger tea. Unless it's in the summer, I can leave out the ginger, particularly if they're warm. But honey is very good for the metabolism, and it's good for weight loss. It's astringent. It clears mucus out. So imagine you have a big, heavy, overweight person. They got a lot of mucus, a lot of phlegm, no appetite, cold hands, cold feet. So the ginger warms them up, keeps the circulation going, keeps the blood to their brain. And lemon is cleansing. It's a citrus, so it's got this cleansing aspect to it, which is why we have a lemon peel a floor cleaner. It's so strong, you can clean your floor with lemon peel extract. So this person's overweight, and you can see even in my cholesterol tea, we use lemon peel and citrus. We use hot and sour to reduce fat in the body. And so the herbs will often be sour, and for weight loss, for fat burning purposes. So I give him lemon and honey, and then maybe ginger tea. So you're just drinking lemon, honey, ginger tea. The ginger keeps the body warm, keeps the blood flowing. The honey kind of gives them a little energy, keeps the blood, and helps with the weight loss. And then the lemon is kind of detoxing. So if you're going to fast and you have something like this, a tool or a method of doing lemon, ginger, and honey, you're going to get way better results. You're just not going to have to fast as long. It's going to be more effective. So fasting has many variations. In fact, during that time I was fasting in India. I think that's why I was fasting a lot, because I remember going to these Ayurvedic courses, and I had to pick the course for the next day or something like that. And then one was a woman's menstrual cycle or fasting. Well, I picked fasting, not knowing that my future clients, how to address menstrual imbalances, probably would have been more valuable. I had to learn that knowledge later on. In hindsight, I would have went to the class. But at the time, I went to the fasting class, and it was about 1 month, and we were meeting like every 2 or 3 days, and the whole subject was fasting. So it's a huge subject. It's not so simple like our amateur social media presenters keep repeating to you online. There's many variations, and those are just a few. So back to the timing of a fast. Even from this time in the early 80s, I remember the teachers saying, never end a fast in the evening. And you can see these people online promoting, okay, don't eat for 16 hours. So, you go all night, and then you go all day, and then you get 16, 18 hours, and then you can eat. So I've even asked the patients, well, when are you eating? Well, I'm hungry in the morning, but I don't, because I'm fasting. And then I don't eat until 4 o'clock. Well, you're breaking the one golden rule for fasting, which I remember my teacher teaching me. And of course, he was also following Ayurveda, not social media. So, the same information I learned later with other teachers and in the books, never break the fast in the evening. Either do intermediate fasting in the day, which basically means you're eating meals with no snacking, with maybe just a little fruit, because snacking on nuts, crackers, and chips and cookies is just unhealthy for everybody, even nuts. This is a big we have an epidemic of nut eaters, let me tell you. I mean, it seems like 80% of my clients are just snacking on nuts, and it's giving them, thin people get bellies from it, overweight people get fatter. It really wrecks your appetite. So really everybody should be intermediate fasting to some degree, because you should not be eating between meals. And Americans are big snackers and grazers. And so really intermediate fasting is what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, in ancient times, people didn't have protein bars in between their meals. They just got hungry, felt hungry, and went to lunch and dinner. But back to the timing. So you end it the next morning. If you're going to fast a whole day, which is really the full day fast, and best really only for the kapha type. Vata type should never do it. Pitta, maybe it depends on case by case. Then you break the fast in the morning when you're hungry. Never, ever go all day and then only eat in the evening. If you're not hungry until 3 or 4 o'clock, you might as well just skip it. Go to sleep with maybe a little apple, to fill your belly up, because apple's a lot of fiber, not the juice, the apple, and maybe 2 apples. And then you'll be hungry in the morning. In fact, recently in spring, I did apple fast. I did like a weekend, just 2 days. All I did was just eat apples. I must have ate like 5 or 6 apples a day just to kind of keep me full. And sweet apples, if you're a pitta type, and you could do sour green apples if you're a kapha type. And then, of course, we have many teas that can assist you. I have even a tea on herbmanteas.com. You could go to herbmanteas.com and look for a tea called appetite control tea. And a lot of times when I really want to fast somebody, I just tell them, just drink the tea all day. Makes it easier. And if you get really hungry, just eat an apple. Simple. There's no point to struggle. If you know what you're doing, you can still achieve the same objectives by just drinking the herbal tea all day. At least it suppresses your appetite. And 1 apple will, fill up your belly. It's not going to hurt you from the fast. You're just still not going to break it till the next morning. And when you break it the next morning, you should be hungry. Now, if you want to do longer than 2 or 3 days, longer than 1 day, you really should be kapha person and have pretty much excessive body weight. I had a woman recently, she had degenerative bones, hair loss, brittle nails, and she had fasted like a few days. And I go, how'd you feel? She says, mentally, I felt clear. Physically, I felt wiped out. Well, that's right. She didn't have the capacity to be fasting a few days. So I told her, never fast again, never juice again. Don't get me on smoothies. I did a whole webinar on the counter indications and harms of doing certain types of smoothies, but juicing is better. So say you're Vata person, it's the springtime. Remember, timing is important too. Don't fast in the winter time. That's not the time to fast when it's cold. You got to fast when it's warm, because if you've ever fasted for very long, your body temperature drops and your heart rate drops. You need the warmth. You need the heat. You need the sun. So don't fast in the winter. Really don't fast in the fall. The best time is right smack in the summertime when it's hot and when the fruit's out. So that's why a lot of people traditionally did grape fast. The Romans used to do some grape fast in the spring. They went by the season because they had the grapes. The grapes were there in abundance. So people used to do 1, 2, 3 day spring fasting of just grapes and just clean themselves out, lose 5 or 10 pounds quite quickly. Usually the weight they gained over the winter time eating a lot of this animal protein, which they stored because they didn't have the vegetables, and they were kind of had to have more meat because they didn't have any fresh vegetables or very little, and they didn't have any fruit in the middle of the winter. So, and to keep warm, you have to eat more, and keep body fat is protecting you from the cold. So if you're in a very cold climate, fasting is going to be more, you know, more difficult. You got to wait until the sun's coming out. And if you're in the South and it's hot and sunny all the time, or you'll be able to get away with doing it more. But it should be warm outside, and it should not be, according to Ayurveda, not cloudy and rainy. And once I fasted for 21 days, I told you I felt like crying when it was cloudy. I kind of understood why, because you need the heat. And, when you do fast too long, like many women have told me, they said, oh, I fasted for a couple days, even just intermediate fasting, one meal a day. And they were already thin and depleted women anyway, with hair loss, degenerative bones conditions. They just, they got on YouTube and got influenced and by the influencers, and they did it. And then they said not only did they feel weaker for a while, even though people do talk about mental clarity, but that's because you didn't have any toxins in there too. But most people will lose their libido after a couple days of fasting. It's hard to make more semen when you're not eating. So it's counterindicated to a sexual life. It's counterindicated, if you're very busy. In fact, I can never fast while I'm meeting patients. I can just feel like I need a little food if I have a lot of patients in a row. If I just need food just to feed my brain sometimes. We know our head is using up most of our calories. So if you're fasting, you shouldn't be working, you shouldn't be sexually active, you shouldn't be exercising, you should just be resting and fasting for that whole day. So a lot of overweight people, I give it out. I said, why don't you just fast one day a week? That's the easiest. Just fast on Sunday, the day you don't work, and rest, and then just start eating again the diet that I gave you on Monday morning. Because if you fast one day a week, that's 52 days in a year. So that's a lot of fasting, and you can usually lose a few pounds. And that's one of course, the main benefits of fasting is you kind of reset the metabolism and you lose some weight, you burn off the fat, because if you're an overweight person, you're storing, you got too much storage of energy on you, so you easily can go a day or two. And some people, some kapha types, I'll do the whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday. But it's not recommended if you have a job, you've got to think. And I personally know that myself, that without food, I just really can't even do appointments, because it doesn't look like you're using up a lot of energy. But when you're thinking and you're concentrating, you're trying to remember, you're looking at doing a lot of mental work, then you're just really burning the calories, and that can even make you hungry. And if, like me, my mind is very important, I can't forget people and forget herbs and forget treatments and forget Ayurveda. So I really would never fast while I'm meeting patients. So I save it for the weekends. And generally, I have a very strong appetite. I can eat 3-4 big meals a day and hardly gain weight. And because I'm pitta, so usually when I fast, I just do it on apples. And if I had a bunch of wild blueberries, I would do it. So, but generally, if you're going to do a whole day and you've got the extra weight and it's warm outside, there's always criteria. See, that's what then you want to break the fast in the morning. Never do what you're seeing online, where people are just telling you don't eat for 18 hours and then it means you can start eating at 4 or 5 o'clock. No, that's wrong. If you've gone that long, you might as well just skip the rest of the day and start breaking your fast in the morning. Now, of course, there's other teas that you can do. I do like a fennel coriander tea, because I'm pitta, I get hot, hungry, and fennel's kind of sweet and cooling and help keep the appetite down. So I'll do fennel water, soak fennel seeds in water and drink it, coriander and water. Overweight people, like I said, I'll do lemon water, honey water, so cold people. Oh, and you can do juicing too. Like if you're a Vata person, you're a little overweight, and maybe you need to have something because you're still working, then you can do a juice, not a smoothie, a juice. And but of course, everybody is different on juicing. Vata person should do roots and warm, like ginger, beets, carrot. And a kapha person can do more leafy greens and, spinach, celery, and things like that are much lighter and more diuretic. A person who's dry doesn't want to do celery. I think everybody forgot the big celery cleanse. That was a big fad for a while. I haven't heard that one for a while, but there was a time where I would say 50% of my patients thought celery juice cleansing was a fad. But that, of course, was promoted by one of the biggest fraudsters in healthcare history, the celery juice fast. And again, not to say that it didn't have value. The problem was he was telling everybody to do it. So we'd get these thin women who were dry, and I'd say celery is a diuretic. I mean, it's just gonna make you pee. And they go, yeah, I was even peeing at night. Well, you're already dry, you're already thin, you're not overweight. It's the worst for you. You should just do, ginger to keep you warm, carrots, and beets, warming roots. So you have some nutrients. So if you're really a Vata person with a little overweight and it's summer, it's warm, and you want to do a fast, you could do it on this roots juicing. Now, Kapha type, if you've got water retention and swelling, I do give out celery juicing. It's in the ancient text. The flaw in that fraudster was that he told everybody to do it. He had a few variations of it, but he got convinced that celery juice was a cure-all, and people did it, but now we don't hear about it. So, this is the problem, that the so-called amateur doesn't know the details. Well, they have the saying is the devil's in the details, right? I always remind people, you can read about things all you want, but doesn't mean you have any experience. Take horseback riding, driving a car, just about anything, even herbalism. You can read about it all you want, but you're never going to be that good on a horse until you get on the horse. You're never going to be good at driving a car until you drive a car. And you'll never really be good at herbalism until you start giving herbs out to people and taking them yourself. And then you learn through experience, and academic knowledge only goes so far. It maybe just gives you a little bit of a foundation of the rules of the road. Just like if you go to traffic school, you got to study all the rules, and that's important to know the rules, but it doesn't help you become a better driver. You have to get out there and practice. And this, unfortunately, is what we see online is people, they just research. They don't even get the rules right, but they have this kind of academic knowledge, no experience meeting patients, no experience fasting with other people. Maybe they did it themselves. They felt good. So they're just kind of regurgitating the same information and telling everybody to fast. Well, I hope I've made my point that, fasting can be very powerful for the right person and can be very harmful for the powerful for the right person in the right circumstances in the right time, and very harmful for the wrong person at the wrong time or in the wrong way. So, of course, it's better to always go to an expert who has experience like myself, and then I can advise you, which all spring I was doing a lot of fasting for people, including myself, because that's the best time to start fasting. And you can do another fast in the summer when it's hot and warm, and a juice fast will keep your body cool. So there's many variations. And of course, as an herbalist, there's many teas and substances we can take during the fast. And basically all of my cases, I do case by case. So even here, I have to generalize and talk in terms of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. But even to me, that's a generalization because, you can have an overweight Vata and you can have a depleted Kapha type of person. If the Kapha has been doing too much fasting, even though they've got a big frame, they could still be depleted and have a degenerative condition from extreme fasting. Like me, I wasn't overweight when I was young, but I created a deficiency by too much fasting. And then there's a Vata type person who's maybe been thin their whole life and now they're overweight. So, they could get away with a little fasting. But everybody should really be doing intermediate fasting because that's just natural. It means basically no snacking. That's what true intermediate fasting is. If you look it up in Ayurvedic texts, you should always be fasting a little bit between each meal. The real question is how long and what could you have in between? That's a real variation. Of course, if you're a skinny depleted Vata, we give you 4 meals a day, but you still can't be snacking on nuts and protein bars in between. So you're still doing a little mini fast. You just can't go too long because you don't have any extra body fat because you're depleted. Now, if you're Kapha and you're 300 pounds, maybe you could do 1 meal a day or at least tops 2 meals a day. So you're doing fasting every day. If you're only eating twice a day, 11 o'clock and then late a brunch and then again 7 o'clock at night, you're fasting twice a day already. You're doing it already. So a lot of my own patients, they said, I want to do fasting. I said, you've been doing fasting for 5 years. as my patient. You lost 40 pounds already, you know? I mean, you lost your weight already. You're not even overweight anymore. Why do you want to keep fasting? I told you to fast 5 years ago, and I basically, by telling you not to snack, not to have cookies, only have 2 meals a day, and on a weekend, just have 1 meal a day. You weren't doing intermediate fasting since the day I met you. And they go, oh. So I go, okay, if you want to do some more fasting, we could start to do weekends. We could start to do a day, but you got to have some extra body fat on you. And otherwise, you could become depleted. And you don't want to become depleted. Nutritional deficiencies are always the danger of extreme diets. And of course, now they've got both combining extreme diets where you're leaving out whole food groups. There's many diets like carnivore diet doesn't believe in any fruit. Let's leave out a whole food group and see what happens to us. Maybe you'll get scurvy from not having any vitamin C. We see it. I see it. I see people have, it's extreme nutritional deficiencies from following an extreme diet. It wasn't just the vegans who used to have the B12 deficiency. That was the early extreme diet and extreme deficiency. But now we got all kinds of extreme diets and resulting in nutritional deficiencies. So if you're already running with nutritional deficiencies from your extreme diet, then you start fasting on top of it, you're just going to have more nutritional deficiencies. And it's very common, very, very common. I mean, because I'm meeting patients like every day. I mean, even today, I'm meeting patients every single day. Even Sunday, I have one patient. So you could say 7 days a week for almost 3 decades now. And of course, I don't always do the weekends. And I do take a few vacations, but we're talking a lot of patients. And there's a lot of nutritional deficiencies going on out there. And, of course, when you get your blood work done, they may only be checking your vitamin D and maybe your zinc, but nobody's doing a full, metals test of all the different minerals test and all of, you can get a full test of all your vitamins, but a doctor isn't going to do it right away. They're doing D a lot. And of course, we all know we have a lot of vitamin D deficiency, which is, of course, sunlight deficiency. And I did speak on this in a previous talk, the importance of sunlight. Okay, I hope that helped clarify it. I hope I've expelled this myth and this, misunderstandings that we have out there about fasting. So remember, it depends on you, depends on your condition, and there's many health issues that fasting will get worse. Anxiety, insomnia will all get worse if you're fasting. So, there's conditions. You have to memorize or know the conditions that are counterindicated for everything. And there's many counterindications for fasting. And as a professional, that's the last thing we want to do is create nutritional problems and other problems with our patients, or we would have no patients. I mean, it's one thing not to have the treatment succeed. And, people can kind of understand, particularly if you're treating 2, 3 things and, 2 of your treatments work and 1 didn't, they're with you. But if you do give them some extreme diet, just throw them on keto with intermediate fasting like everybody's promoting online, and then they have a whole bunch of new health problems, you're going to lose them as a patient because it's going to dawn on them that your treatment didn't work for them and you're creating new problems. So I always say to my students, hey, you can, if you don't get the treatment right, that's better than making more problems. And that's what you have to, new health problems, new deficiencies. So you have to be very careful with fasting because you can create deficiencies. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope I've helped you understand how and when to properly fast according to Ayurveda. Please do an appointment with me if you would like professional advice and individualized guidance for your health, your well-being, and your health conditions. Thank you very much.